We will move on now to second item on our workshop agenda. That's 8.2. Ms. Jennifer Kane, Director of Capital Projects, are going to provide a presentation, discussion, possible action regarding the capital projects update. I think you've been here, what, about 4, 5, 6 months ago?
Yes. Yep. This is the first one this year, but the last one was in November, so we do it twice a year. Yep. So I'm Jennifer Kane, Capital Projects. As I mentioned, this is the first one for the year, but there's two every year that we come giving capital projects updates. On this first slide, it's just a screenshot of the dashboard that we rolled out, I guess, during the last update. So right now, you can see up here, it's at cstx.gov-CIP, so it's open for everybody to see, for the public to interact with, and just kind of some reminders of what all we have on here. So we've got our about 81 active projects showing on the map. There's a handful more that we don't have listed for various reasons, for CSU and different things like that, but we have anywhere between 80 to 90 projects ongoing currently, and it's a live map, and so we change it as things go into warranty or as new projects come on. It's very interactive. As you zoom in to the different points up there, you click on one of the objects and it gives you the more information. It has the information about the budget, a little bit of a summary of the detailed scope of the work, so timeline, and then most importantly, I think, is contact information for each of our project managers. So if someone has more questions, they know exactly who to reach out to. So I'm going to go into detail on 11 of the projects going on right now, and then at the end, if you have any other questions about other projects, I'm happy to discuss those as well. So first up, we've got Greens Prairie, the county section. This is a section of Greens Prairie in between the one we just completed that terminated around Dalton as part of right next to Castlegate, or Castlegate 2, and then it continues on past Wood Lake and ties into the other section near the Creek Meadow subdivision. It's going to follow the same look of both ends there, so it's going to go from the 2 lanes existing and be widened into 4 lanes with a median in the middle and then shared use paths on both sides. The design for this project most of the design was completed a while back when the other phase of the work was done. Since then, there have been a number of utilities that have relocated, like BTU. There's been some new fiber that's been added, and so the design team is working on updating the final design to get that all wrapped up. They've also completed the survey work out there, and we've also gotten appraisals done. There are about 17 easements or different right-of-way parcels that we'll have to acquire, and so we're working through that process as well. We expect that right-of-way acquisition typically takes 18 to 24 months, so we'll get going on that as soon as it is done. Design will also be complete, and then we'll kick off into construction.
You're allowing questions now?
Sure.
This is a question for City Manager. County gave us, or assigned $4 million or $4.2 million to the city to pay for their share. What was the amount?
I think it was around 4.5. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I believe it was 4.
But by the time I get ready to build this and put it out to bid, it'll not be a $6.3 million project. It'll probably be a $7 or $8 million project, knowing what construction costs are. Do we have an opportunity to go back to the county and say, we need to have you share a larger share of this?
We can always ask.
Well, I would suggest that would be an appropriate thing to do, given that it was their decision to delay even arranging to have us do this. Now we're looking at a $7 million project, maybe 8, and they gave us 4.5, thinking they were paying their fair share, which is not true. So I will put that in the hopper.
And we definitely can, once we get closer and have those construction numbers, and I know council knows this, but just as a point, we will take over this road and the maintenance of it in perpetuity once we've constructed it.
That's right. Linda, did you have a comment on that?
Just a quick question. What's involved in property acquisition? I
So,
understand you're taking private property and buying that. How does that work where it's a very proactive type of program? How does that work?
Sure. So the city has land agents, and we've got 2 in Capital Projects Department. And so the first step is we get the survey work and we figure out exactly what's needed, which is what the design team has done. And then the next step typically is we go get appraisals done on those parcels to say, hey, we need 10 foot here, we need 100 foot here, whatever it may be. And we look at it differently. If we're acquiring right away, then we're buying it completely. If we're acquiring an easement, then we're not paying for the full amount, but we're assuming the majority interest of that property. And And so the process is we go out, we get the survey work, we get the appraisals, and then we do initial offer letters to the property owners and say, hey, based on the appraised value, here's what we believe it's worth, here's what we're offering you, and then we enter the negotiations. Sometimes they accept it right away. That's not always the case. And so there's some back and forth there. And so it just depends on what that looks like. And there's different things that are considered. Sometimes it's just the property that we're talking about. Sometimes there's other improvements there that we compensate them for. And so it just depends on specific instances. Then we go back and forth through the negotiations, and then we have a real estate contract that moves forward. And if it's under $100,000, then we sign off, the city manager signs off on it. If it's above that, then it comes to council for approval.
And just a quick note about right-of-way and easement acquisition negotiations. When we give people that estimate, one, there's something called the landowner's bill of rights. They get a copy of that. There's a whole process that's legally required. But when we negotiate, there are certainly negotiations. What I would say is those generally consist of things that we may not have taken into account or are legally possible, because as the city, we are trying to be good stewards of the taxpayers who are purchasing that land, and we're also trying to be fair to people who are their neighbors. So what we don't want is someone to say, well, the fair market value is $5 a square foot, and they take it, and then somebody holds out. We won't arbitrarily pay them for $8 just because they hold out, because then we're not only impacting our citizens, but we're impacting their neighbors who took the offer. So just to say, there are certainly things to negotiate over because every property is different, but we don't pay more just because somebody holds out.
Okay, next up we have the George Bush separated bike lanes. This project is to install separated bike lanes along George Bush from Texas Avenue to Welborn Road. The main component of this project is to install a system called DuraCurb that creates a separation between the vehicular traffic and then the people on bikes. So it'll be kind of a low plastic type traffic rated curb system that goes in, and it'll also have delineators on top of it. A little bit higher and easier for the bikes and the vehicles to see every 100 feet or so. It's part of a grant with TxDOT, so the city is responsible for the design, and then TxDOT is responsible for the bidding and construction of the project. The design has been completed recently, and TxDOT has plans to bid this project out in July of this year. Their projects typically allow for 90 to 120 days to start the work, and so we expect them to start later this fall, potentially after football season. But even if they do not, the work will only be ongoing during the week, so it wouldn't really impact traffic. The other thing to mention is we have notified the school district a couple of times, most recently this past week, to let them know again, hey, here's the timeline, and also here's the contact information for who to talk to at TxDOT once construction starts. Krenick Tap rehabilitation. This project is to replace the existing concrete roadway, the 2 lanes, and go back with new concrete pavement. It also includes a 10-foot wide shared use path on both sides and some storm and sanitary sewer replacements. And it's the extents are from Texas Avenue all the way to Highway 6. The design engineer is working on the final design documents now. We expect that they'll be completed later this summer, and then we'll go out to bid and hopefully start construction sometime this fall. And we have planned to start the work at Texas Avenue and move towards Highway 6. We rotated the original plan due to the Christmas parade, so we want to make sure that we're not impacting that route in any way.
Could I, we have a couple questions, Ms.
Yes.
Kuhn. Oh, several questions.
Ms. Kane, I believe there was a church on Krenick Tap that was concerned about parking, because I think there was there is currently on-street parking.
Yes.
After the renovation, there will no longer be on-street parking. So I think they had some concerns, and I think even the city maybe had some, parks maybe had some concerns, like when they have their tournaments there. Do we know, where are those conversations with the church?
So we've talked to them several times, even after he came and spoke to at the council meeting. There will not be any on-street parking allowed with the new roadway, just because the roadway is getting smaller. We're taking the bike lanes out where people were parking, and now it's on the side, like you mentioned. And so we did consider adding some parking in different places. At this time, it's not part of this project scope.
Gianci.
Perfect segue, Mike, to my question. You just mentioned the narrowing of this road, and then I've received feedback from neighbors around Luther Street, I think it is. Give me some color behind why are we narrowing roadways at a time when our traffic is blowing up like never before?
So in this one, it's 2 lanes and it will continue to be 2 lanes, but the actual width of the pavement is narrowing because we're taking the bike lanes out. So the actual travel lanes aren't getting smaller, but since the bike lanes are no longer down below the curb, they're going up above the curb on the shared use path. That's why it's getting narrower to allow us to stay within the existing right-of-way without having to acquire more land.
So is this you telling me and our bosses, the residents, that even though we're narrowing these roads, the lanes, we're not restricting the number of lanes, and therefore the traffic flow is not going to be impeded from the old version to the newly designed narrower version?
Correct. This does not impact the capacity of the vehicular traffic.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Maloney?
Yeah, and so that goes to the point that we are making bicycle and alternate means of transportation more safe by doing this. Now, it's no longer sharing the road with cars, they are up off of the road, correct, on the multi-use path?
Correct, yes.
That's just smart planning, so I appreciate that. Thanks.
Did you consider a roundabout at Dartmouth?
It was considered. There were some right-of-way constraints there and some budgetary constraints, and so it will remain a 4-way intersection, a 4-way stop.
Four-way stop, and it's not, it doesn't approach a warrant situation, I don't believe. But I just wondered for the future, that might have been an improvement that could have been done, but I know it's more expensive. I would suggest only that sometime down the road, we think about what the parking situation is at Central Park and how we ameliorate that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, next there's Rock Prairie East widening. This is the bond project from Town Lake to William D. Fitch. It includes the widening of the roadway from a 2-lane asphalt roadway to a 3-lane concrete road, and you can see on the screen what the section will look like. It includes separated bike lanes and sidewalks on each side, and then has storm sewer, street lighting, and then a traffic signal will be added at Town Lake. We are currently early in design and expect a 60% design submittal later this fall. Survey work has been completed. There were a number of easements that were acquired years ago, and so we have some of those, but there's some additional right-of-way needs that we need as well for the pavement widening, and so we're working through that right now. We've gotten the survey work and the appraisals, and so we'll start doing offers on those here shortly. Following final design completion and all the right-of-way acquisition needs, we'll bid out the project, and we expect to begin construction in 2026. And construction on this one is expected to take probably a year and a half and be complete in early 2028.
So the people that don't like medians will love this section. After Town Lake, the medians disappear
Yes.
because we have to maintain construction costs.
Yes.
We had
it's-
to shrink it to 2 lanes here with 1 turning lane.
Yeah, so for this one, it was originally planned to look at to continue the 4-lane section, correct. When we looked at it again, some of it was budgetary constraints that caused us to start to relook at it, but we reviewed it with our traffic engineers here internally, and then our design engineers as well, and then we also reviewed it with planning and development services just to look at what the future build-out plans are, and we reviewed that and found that the 3-lane section was appropriate for now and for future needs.
Thank you.
So Jennifer, so where to where is it now 1 lane each direction with a center turn lane?
Starting at Town Lake all the way to William D. Fitch. So the one that's currently in construction now will be the 4 lanes all the way from Highway 6 to Town Lake, and then right past the intersection at Town Lake, it will transition to 3 lanes out to William D. Fitch, like past where the landfill is and all the way.
But it's going to be designed in such a way that it can be expanded at a
Yes.
future date?
Yes, we don't expect that it will need to be, but yes, we are designing in a way that you can easily add on 1 more lane and shift it to be 4 lanes because you've already got the 3 lanes there.
And
Yes.
this is you telling us that even though when I look at Chief Mann's density map from his new software, that's as bright a purple as it gets, Midtown, and the density right there, and we've got more coming there, more coming in at Williams Creek. We've done the analysis, and we believe that downgrading the capacity of that road at this time, even if temporarily, that the juice isn't worth the squeeze of just biting the bullet and building it now?
Correct. From all the information and the data that we have and the review that our engineers, both internal and external, have done, we do not believe the 4 lanes are needed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Nichols.
Thank you.
All right, we've got Lincoln Avenue. So this project is the reconstruction of Lincoln Avenue from Texas Avenue all the way to University Drive. It's currently a 2-lane asphalt roadway and will be replaced, going back with 2 lanes, but concrete. We'll have a shared use path on both sides, and then we're adding a right turn lane at University and then roundabouts at Munson and Nimitz. The construction project was delayed a bit from the Atmos project that recently went through there, but now that has been completed. And I believe it was last meeting we brought to you the Lincoln construction contract. So they're ready to get started. We also hosted a public meeting here on May 7th. It's one of many meetings we've had with the residents there, but we had a kind of a pre-construction kickoff meeting with the residents to let them know what was coming and what to expect. And everyone should start to see probably barricades going up next week with construction to start shortly thereafter. There will be primarily one-way traffic during the duration of the project just because it is so tight right there, and they're going to start working from Texas to Terro. They're going to work in like half sections, so Texas to Terro, one side, and then the other side, and they'll go Terro to University, one side. So, and then there will be one minor complete shutdown that we'll have near Best Buy because there is a storm sewer that goes across the roadway, so we have to do a complete shutdown temporarily to do that installation.
Are we going to take out that huge dip when we go into Best Buy?
Yes, it will be
Oh,
smoothed.
great, thanks.
Yes, yes.
Me too.
Ms. Kuna?
Ms. Kane, do we know tree impact on this? Are we losing a lot of trees when we go and do this rehab?
We do. There are a number of trees that are coming out, yes. And we have communicated individually with all of the property owners that have trees coming out multiple times, both in person, through letters and different things, yes.
And do we make any effort to do any kind of replanting program? Like we have all those trees that we're gonna lose because of the highways, so we bought a special little, what do you call a scooper guy that,
The tree spade?
Tree spade.
thank you for the correct words, tree spade. I mean, can we offer to replant a tree to
So-
replace the ones that we're pulling out?
So we are looking at ones that we can save on this project and other ones that are of the appropriate size or the appropriate kind that would survive the transport. So we are looking at that. There are a number of trees on this one that aren't really viable for that just because of the size or because they're post oak or something that just won't maintain that. And the majority of the ones that we are taking out are in the right of way, and so they're not actually in easements or anything in someone's yard. And a lot of them are also going where a new water line is going, and so we couldn't put them back there even if we wanted to over the water line. But there are other places along the roadway that we are adding trees back to try and re-landscape and make it nicer, but they're not going back in the same areas they're coming out from.
Received a lot of feedback from folks that live on, as obviously you have too. What about this concern regarding sanitation vehicles and buses that come to a stop several spots along? When I said Luther before, I was talking about Lincoln. I just misspoke.
Okay.
What about that? Is that just going to be the new normal over there, or
I mean, yes, there will be some slower impacts because of that. We have been working with A&M and their bus system and coordinating with them, making sure they have enough room to get where they need to go, even in a one-way situation, and same with solid waste and mail and all of that. And so we are coordinating with them, and they're aware of it, but it certainly will, if they're stopping, it will have some impact as people are trying to travel through the area.
and sanitation trucks? Are folks putting their refuse containers along Lincoln right now?
There are some that do. A lot of the properties along that roadway do back up to it. So there's a handful. I couldn't tell you the exact number, but there's some that do, but the majority do not.
And for those, maybe we look at an alternate, something in the future to help mitigate the traffic impact. But we've taken all these concerns into account in our design, and
We have, yes. We will also have a number, aside from that, when you have to go down the roadway, we also will have a number of detours in place to get people away from that roadway unless they absolutely have to travel that way, just to keep the traffic as light as we can. And that's one other thing I did want to mention. There's a couple other projects in the area that we're holding off on until Lincoln is complete because we are going to be detouring around near Thomas Park, on James and Puryear. So those projects are on the books but will be coming later once this one is done, so we're not detouring people into more construction.
thank you.
Just one last question, knowing how much civil engineers hate grass next to a curb, is that buffer area, is that some kind of masonry that's separated from the shared use path?
It is, it's stamped concrete. It's not grass.
It's stained concrete,
It's a
basically?
stamped concrete, similar. I've got some on Greens Prairie Road. You'll see around town kind of that red. It looks almost like bricks or pavers, but it's stamped concrete.
It's smooth. It's not,
It has a little bit of texture to it, but yeah, it's not, there's no grass.
the idea is not to walk on that area, but to stay on the shared use
Yes.
path. Okay. I assumed that we would not have grass there because engineers don't like that. I'll accept that. Thank you.
All right, next, the new water wells, 11, or 10, 11, and 12, and then the new collection line associated with that. So it constructs the 3 new water wells and the collection line that will tie into the distribution system. These new wells will increase capacity due to increasing demands and will help with the TCUQ capacity compliance. This contract recently came to y'all for design, and so design has been kicked off. Right now, they're getting started on survey work for both the collection line and the potential access needs. And then this project does have a very hard deadline due to our permit requirements and will have to be completed by September of 2028. And so right now, like I said, we're working on survey and getting any easements that are needed, and then they'll jump into design and get that done over the next year or so. McCullough Utility Rehab. So this project is the rehab of water and wastewater infrastructure on Arizona Street, Phoenix, Carolina, and Georgia Streets. The existing lines are very old and have been deteriorating, and some don't have good access where they are located, and so they're moving that infrastructure. This project the design has been completed for a while, but it did require TxDOT approval because there's there's a directional drill tie-in at the intersection of Welburn, and so we needed TxDOT approval, and so we recently got the permit from them. And so this project had gone out to bid, and we expect to bring the construction contract to y'all at the next meeting on June 27th. We're also planning to host a public meeting in July, so next month, to let all the property owners know. There have been previous ones. It's been a while, and so we want to get back with everybody and let them know it's coming and make sure they understand and have our contact information. And we expect this to be complete in winter of 2025. All right, next we've got Bee Creek and Central Park tennis court improvements. This is one of the 2022 bond projects. So it includes the reconstruction of the 2 courts at Central Park and then the 4 courts at Bee Creek. It will include redoing the actual court itself, the whole slab, and then the surfacing. And then it will include lighting, fencing, and new netting and windscreens. Final design has been completed, and it's currently in for permitting, and we expect to bid this project out in July. And then we expect construction to probably take about 6 to 8 months.
Ms. Kunan.
Yes, Ms. Kane, a couple questions on that. We had heard about the Parks Board's private-public partnership program, and they were going to do indoor tennis courts. Do we know anything more about that? Is that in conjunction with this project? Is it entirely separate?
It's separate, but I'm not sure of the update. I may need someone else to answer.
That money was clawed back. It went over to the city of Bryan.
Right. The gentleman that had offered the money at the council meeting, that was for the foundation to do a project for indoor tennis courts. He has since rescinded his offer.
Oh, thank you. I didn't know.
Yeah.
And then my other question about this project, the other day I went to these tennis courts, the ones at Bee Creek. They have pickleball lines on them. Will these new ones have pickleball lines on them?
No, they're not planning to have pickleball lines on them, just tennis.
Okay, so they're going to go from a dual purpose back to a single purpose.
And then we're adding, the new pickleball at Anderson.
Right. Thank you.
Central Park Operations Shop. So this is another 2022 bond project. It includes the demolition of the existing Central Parks Operations Shop and then the reconstruction of it there. The new shop will be constructed actually as 2 separate buildings to allow for better access and operational flow. And the buildings will include storage, workshop space, offices, restroom buildings, and some meeting space as well. Final design has been completed, and permitting has also been completed. We expect to bid this out next month as well. We expect construction to take about 12 to 14 months, and we're currently working through some of the details with the Parks Department because it will be under construction during Christmas in the park, and so just coordinating the efforts there and to minimize any impacts. Okay. And then pickleball and futsal courts, another 2022 bond project at Anderson Park, adding the 4 pickleball courts, some additional parking, and then 2 multi-use courts. For the 2 different courts you see there, the smaller one in the front is for, it can be used for anything, but it's going to be primarily striped and planned out originally for roller hockey, bike polo, and then for younger kids playing futsal. And then the larger court in the back will be primarily set up for futsal. But again, you can play anything on it at any time, but it'll be set up that way when it gets constructed. A final design is complete, and the plans are being submitted for permitting now. We anticipate going out to bid later this month or early July, and then construction to begin in late summer.
Ms. Cunha.
Ms. King, can you flip back to the Bee Creek one for just a minute?
Sure.
And then go back forward to the one we were just on. They're both 1.7 million. That's a surprise to me because in one we're just rehabbing, and in the other we're new building, and including a parking lot, right?
Yes, there's a parking lot.
I guess because I don't have your professional expertise, that just surprises me. What makes a rehab cost the same as a new build with a new parking lot? It seems like.
So we're replacing I think originally maybe the scope might have been to rehab the tennis courts, but we actually are going to remove and replace. They're not in good condition, the slabs there, so they are going to be removed and replaced.
Oh, so it's essentially a new build.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, and is it going to be tension foundation too?
Yes.
Yeah, so that adds a lot of money.
Yes. Okay, I think this is my last one. Lincoln Area Center Improvements, which was also a 2022 bond project. This project includes the addition of a restroom building and associated pedestrian improvements near the Lincoln Recreation Center. If you remember, a couple months ago, we brought back, we had a survey that we did and asked the public where they would like to see this restroom building located around the Lincoln Recreation Center. The feedback we got was to locate it next to the existing splash pad. And that's where we're planning for it to be. And so we're in early design now to site the restroom building there and other, like I said, pedestrian improvements. And we expect design to be completed later this year and the project to bid out in early 2025. One other thing to note that not necessarily part of the bond project, but we're tying it together since they're both right there. There were some CDBG funds available. We're using some of that to redo or to redesign the splash pad there. And so that's part of the same scope of work, at least for design. And then for funding for construction, we have to wait for additional CDBG funds to go into construction, and then we'll move forward with the construction of the restroom with the bond funds. And I believe, and that's my last one, but I'll be happy to answer any questions on any other projects you'd like.
Any questions from that end? Other questions?
Awesome.
Good coverage. I just thank you all for working on that online dashboard. And I know you're committed to keeping that up to date because every one of your projects changes every 2 or 3 weeks, or many of them do. So good effort there. I hope that continues to stay up to date. I guess I would have one other question because I know it'll be asked to me. The transfer line, sewer line that goes past Mr. Yancey's property and goes out past Carter Lake and all of that, is that still under design in part of it, or is that?
We kicked off construction, I guess last month. So it's under construction. They're going to start work out at the plant in July.
Some of the pieces had been done, but now they're connecting all of those pieces.
Yes,
And so
correct.
that'll be re-energized in July.
They'll start work at the plant in July. Yes. Mhm.
And I noticed on the Bee Creek extension, they're moving equipment around right next to Texas Avenue. So
They
I
are.
assume we'll see a big bore going under that
Yes, they
under that
completed.
creek and on under the road.
Yep, they completed the work at Dartmouth a couple of weeks ago, so now they've moved closer to the Texas end, and they've got some work to do there, and then, of course, in between. But yes, they will be boring under Texas Avenue.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Very good. Appreciate the presentation. That concludes our workshop. We have 3 items on the regular agenda, starting with 9.1. 9.1 is a public hearing, presentation, discussion, possible action regarding an ordinance adopting standards of care for the city's parks and recreation departments, elementary age 5 to 13, youth recreational program in compliance with the exemptions for child care licensing according to Texas Human Resources Code Section 42.041 B14, Ms. Hayden.
Good evening, Kelsey Hyden with Parks and Recreation. The item before you tonight is an annual housekeeping item for our Parks and Recreation youth program standards of care for all of our summer camp and recreation programs that we offer. The guidelines, standards of care are guidelines for operations and cover things like our staff ratios, staff qualifications and training, safety guidelines and facility requirements. In addition, we are required to provide notice to all of our participants and their guardians and parents that we are not licensed childcare facilities. We do this on our website, in our program guide, and at the time of registration. The standards of care are required by the Texas Human Resource Code, and there's requirements to provide exemption to municipalities offering summer camp operations. The requirements for that are to hold a public hearing, as we are tonight, to present the council with the standards of care ordinance annually, and then to provide proof of those adoptions. The ordinance, as I mentioned, is a housekeeping item that we present to you all for consideration annually, and this year we do not have any changes or revisions from when it was approved in 2023. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have regarding the standards of care.
Questions, Mr. Yancey?
Just have one. All of our activity leaders are still required to be CPR certified, including infants, AED certified, and certified in first aid. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't have anyone signed up for the public hearing, but I will open the public hearing for anyone who wishes to address this set of standards. No one was signed up, and I see no one approaching the lectern, so I will close the public hearing and turn to the will of the council regarding approval.
Move to approve.
Motion made and seconded regarding approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 9.2 is the next item on our agenda. Again, a public hearing, presentation, discussion, possible action regarding an ordinance vacating and abandoning a 1,788 square foot portion of a 20-foot wide public utility easement located over, across, and upon Lot 35, Block 4 of the Williams Creek Lake Estates subdivision, Phase 4, College Station, Brazos County, Texas, according to the final plat recorded in volume 17508, page 181 of the official public records of the Brazos County, Texas. Mr. Harper.
Good evening, Council. Lucas Harper, Planning and Development Services. Tonight's agenda item 9.2 is the requested abandonment of a 1,788 square foot portion of a 20-foot wide public utility easement. The easement's located along the shared lot line of 4404 and 4402 Williams Creek Drive, approximately 160 feet northwest of the intersections of Williams Creek and Joe Will Drives. The applicant's requesting abandonment of a 10-foot wide portion of the total 20-foot wide easement. And the 10-foot wide portion is located on entirely on the lot at 4404. The abandonment was initiated by the applicant due to the desire to install a retaining wall that would not be allowed inside of a public utility easement. The lots along this stretch of Williams Creek Drive, they have to contend with about a 4 to 5 foot slope down the side of the hill, and the desired retaining wall will help alleviate some of that grade change. There are no utilities located in the easement, and a 10-foot wide portion of the easement will remain on 4402 to provide continuity from the front and rear easements. All utility stakeholders entitled to use the easement have provided their approval for the abandonment, as has the adjacent neighbor. Staff does recommend approval of the abandonment. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions, Mr. Smith?
Why did we have the easement in the first place?
Sure, absolutely. So this area is served by BTU. The ordinance doesn't require side lot line easements, and we don't generally request them unless a separate utility company or CSU requests those. BTU did request side lot line utility easements, and they did sign off on approval of this abandonment.
And no other questions? Thank you for the presentation. I will open the public hearing on this item, 9.2. I did not see that anyone has signed up for this as well. Yes, this was just documentation that the consent was agreed to by the property owner next door.
That is correct.
And that was recently completed.
Yes,
I
sir.
think that's why they provided it to us, because up till today, there was still some question whether that consent was going to be made. But it is made, and everything is in order. So public hearing is open if there's anyone who wishes to speak to the council on this item. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and turn to the will of the council.
Move to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Harvell, and I think I heard a second from Mr. Maloney. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Now we'll move to item 9.3, presentation discussion, possible action on a deductive change order, number 10, for a credit in the amount of $802,227 for the Lick Creek wastewater treatment plant capacity expansion construction contract with CSA Construction Incorporated. This is an item that Ms. Kane can present to us, or will present to us.
Sure. Good evening, Jennifer Kane, Capital Projects. This is to close out the Lick Creek treatment plant expansion project. It is a deductive change order, which means it's a savings back to the city. There were a couple of allowances that were unused, so that money comes back to the city. And then there was some additional costs that we brought to the city council for approval for Friesen Nichols, our design engineer, because the project went on longer than expected, and so those actual costs were recuperating from the contractor. So that's what this is. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Any questions for Ms. Kane? We're always happy to receive 800,000 plus back. A very well-managed project and extremely successful, and amazing technology. Many of us did the tour when we had the groundbreaking. So thank you for your work on that. Chair will entertain a motion. Motion made by Mr. Wright, seconded by Mr. Smith. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.